Take a minute of silence in whatever room you're in and just look around and notice things that you've never noticed before. Now you're sitting in a room somewhere if you're watching this video, and here's some things in the room I'm in. If you notice things in the room that you didn't notice before, then it's likely then that you know more about that room, and perhaps you know more about the person or the people who inhabit that room, who live there. Today we're starting a series called Noticing God. It's based on a book by Richard Peace of the same title. And noticing God can kind of be considered like looking around a room and noticing things that you haven't noticed before. Or it could also be like a radio dial where you're trying to tune in the radio. And of course, if you're too young, you don't even know this illustration. But you're trying to find the right space on the dial to hear the voice coming through. That's what we're doing in this series. We're tuning the dial. We're slowing down and learning how to notice God. Richard Peace says, it's not just that we want to know about God, we want to know God. We need to learn to notice. We need to engage in what I've come to call the spiritual discipline of noticing. Now, Richard Peace refers to it as the spiritual discipline of noticing, but there have been all kinds of ways that Christian authors have talked about this over the centuries. One of them that's particularly famous is Brother Lawrence's practicing the presence of God. Or another favorite of mine is the mystic Thomas Kelly, who is a Quaker, and he said it this way: practice of inward orientation, of inward worship and listening. Notice that all of these authors use some form of the word practice or discipline. You don't start off good at this. It takes practice, like anything. At best, all we can do is put ourselves in those places where we can listen and engage in those practices that enable us to notice God. But mostly, it is God. This series goes through the season of Lent, and Lent is the 40 days that lead up to Easter. It's a time in kind of the way that Christians have thought about it over the centuries, a time of practicing, preparing your heart and your mind and your body and your soul, your spirit, to be ready to encounter the resurrected Jesus at Easter. One of the practices that Christians have done during Lent is the practice of fasting. And fasting is one of these things that needs practice. It feels awkward at first. You practice a little bit. You try it one year. It didn't work very well. You try it again the next year. Maybe it still doesn't work very well, but you're maybe starting to understand it a little better. You practice it again. You start to catch it a little bit. My own experience of fasting has been that I'm continually learning how to do this well through the season of Lent and through other seasons of the Christian year. Whether it's practicing fasting or practicing the presence of God or practicing noticing God, this reminds me of what I've learned as the competence curve. And the competence curve starts out with unconscious incompetence. That's when you don't know how incompetent you are. It's like the state of bliss. But then after that comes immediately the stage of awkwardness. That is conscious incompetence, when you realize how bad you are. From there, if you keep practicing, you progress to the stage of conscious competence, where you are competent when you think about it. And the person who has mastered a certain skill ends up eventually in unconscious competence, where they don't even have to think about it to be good at it. Think again about this practice of fasting over the season of Lent. And at first you think, oh, well, I could fast from something, that'd be easy. And then that's the unconscious incompetence. And then you try it, and now you are conscious of your incompetence about it. You realize that fasting, well, fasting isn't dieting. Fasting isn't trying to lose weight. Fasting is giving up something good in order to attain something better. And as you begin to practice it, you start to realize, oh, the hunger pains start to point me to a lot of different things. They point me to a sort of inward hunger and thirst for righteousness, for justice, for love and mercy. They remind me of people who regularly experience hunger, physical hunger, and that nobody should go without enough food. But one of the ways that we think about fasting here as we lead up to Easter is fasting reminds you to pray for people who you are going to invite to Easter. And you fast and you pray for those people. And there's a practice to this. It takes time over many years to try to facilitate and learn this skill of noticing God through fasting. So here's a time for us to stop just listening to me and talk and chat in the comment section if you're watching online, or to turn to the person next to you and talk. What is something good that you can give up or fast from over Lent in order to attain something better? Let's take some time to talk about that.